You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
I left my job at Procter & Gamble because I saw young men addicted on heroin back in the late 1960s in Brooklyn, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I said, I got to help my brother. And I started reaching out to him. God sent me to prison where I preached. I left Procter & Gamble, a cushy job, an expense account. They gave me housing substance, gave me a brand new automobile, gave me the prestige of the world. I left that. God sent me into the prisons, and I began to preach to my brothers in prison. For 3 years, I preached to my prisoners about the power of God. He kept me there for 3 years, didn't let me out. I cut my teeth preaching to crack-addicted men, preaching to men that have witnessed most of their friends die of overdoses of heroin. I'm trying to reach out. I'm trying to tell you why the white man is dying and why his days are over with, if you don't mind. But there's one final thing I need to say before I wrap up here in this teaching, and that is this. The heroin epidemic, and then between 1970 and 1990, the prison population in America went from 200,000 prisoners, both black and white, to over 2 million prisoners in a matter of 20 years. And 1.2 of those 2 million prisoners were black men who had been ravaged by heroin, ravaged by hate, ravaged by poverty, ravaged by the fact that their fathers had gone to jail, ravaged by the fact that they were born of prostitute mamas, ravaged by the fact that they were uneducated, ravaged by the fact of drugs, ravaged, and the prison population in a matter of 20 years jumped 2 million prisoners, 1.2 from one race alone. It was in that infusion that I went into the prisons. In the 1970s, I went into the prisons. And from Florida to New York, I preached inside the prisons. I'm telling you. Now, fortunately, prison did help, but it destroyed the Negro family because most Negro children grew up without fathers in the home. Most men had from 10 to 25 years was the average prison sentence. And many were second-time offenders. So most children now, adults, grew up without fathers in the home. They grew up without male leadership. Negro women began to have to head households. The economy of the Negro community collapsed because men there weren't two incomes in the household. It collapsed. It ravaged the period between 1970 and 2000, the year 2000. Destroyed the Negro community. It was in that period that God raised me up. Now, I'm not here to toot my own horn. I'm trying to tell you why I went into the prison and what I was able to do inside the prison. The white man doesn't have anything like that. Moreover, he thinks Trump is his deliverer. He's not. He's not. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.